Hi everyone, thank you for joining us for our Locus Energy webinar, Reducing the Complexity of PV System Monitoring. We're going to give it another minute or two for some more folks to log on, and then we'll get started, so we'll be right back. Hi again, everyone. I wanted to thank you again for joining us for today's webinar. Just a couple of quick things before we get started. You'll notice on the bottom of your screen there is a box for questions. Please feel free to submit your questions at any time during the webinar, and we will address them at the end or follow up with you directly via email after the completion of the webinar. Also, in case you did not get the chance to download the slides, they're available in the top left corner of the console. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Zach, who's going to kick things off.
Hello, everyone. Good morning and good afternoon. Thank you for joining our webinar today. As Caitlin mentioned, the purpose of this webinar is to highlight reducing the complexity around PV system monitoring. We will be doing that both through a demo of our platform, SolarOS, as well as looking at the charting tool and some of the new functionality that was rolled out in our newest version of the charting tool. To do some quick introductions here, my name is Zachary Livingston. I'm the Director of Account Management on the commercial and utility side of the business. I'll be running the quick intro here before I hand it off to the larger team. Doing the live demo will be both Jyoti Jain and Bobby Ostrich. Jyoti is the Director of Software Product Management, and Bobby is a Product Manager. Also joining me at the Q&A session at the end of this call will be Tyler Cheney. Tyler is a Project Manager and works in our Field Ops department, and will be your presenters today. As Caitlin mentioned, there is a window for asking questions at the bottom of your screen. Apart from detailing your questions at the end, if you are experiencing any technical difficulties or hearing issues, please let us know and we will address those questions immediately. So the purpose of this webinar is threefold. It is to walk through common scenarios with the sample data. So we'll be running through some important use cases, some common use cases that you all experience on a daily or weekly basis, and highlighting how you can use both the platform and the charting tool to walk through those different use cases. Secondly, we'll be highlighting our newest release of the new charting tool and showing some of the new functionality that was released within this new release. Lastly, we will be looking at different data and how you can use that data to assess system performance, look at real-time issues, and again, use the charting tool to look at how these would affect overall performance. So a few of the use cases that we will cover today, these are just a few high-level examples. This includes, but is not limited to, verifying a newly commissioned system for site generation, assessing the long-term performance of a site against energy expectations, investigating a site showing negative generation, investigating measured versus expected energy ratios, also known as EER, energy expected ratio, comparing measured energy against modeled and expected energy, investigating alerts, detecting inverter underperformance, finding DC string outliers, and saving complex charts for reuse and sharing. So the charting tool is Locus Energy's data visualization tool. As many of you know, there are different ways to look at data, different ways that data can be interpreted. The charting tool is the way to look at data visually. It has a significant amount of functionality, including looking at different time granularity from everything from 5 minutes to a year, has the ability to overlay alerts on charts showing both open and closed alerts. You can see a summary of data under that chart, as well as looking at it in different intervals, such as average, min, and max. And you also have the ability to take that visual data and download it to different documents, including Excel, PDF, a few other examples as well. So there are a number of reasons why we are excited about this newest release, but a few of them are new functionality that we've rolled out within this release. Some of this new functionality includes saving and sharing charts. So that is the ability to bookmark a chart and recreate it quickly without needing to rebuild it from scratch. We have now included site hierarchy within the chart so that when you have different meters or DC components under a meter and inverter, that will now be highlighted in the pane of the chart so you can see the overall site organization. You can now use browser functionality to move forward and backwards throughout. So you can go to a previous zoom or forward zoom by using the back and forward button. We have improved the way that alerts are visualized in the charting tool. That allows you to overlay alerts, see the different types of alerts that are on there, as well as if it is an open alert or closed alert. We've provided easier and more seamless ways to normalize this data, and we have provided an improved presentation of data summary. So overall, as I mentioned, we are very excited about this new release. A part of that is the new functionality and the sleeker nature of this new release. But most importantly, this is a segue to the building blocks of building on top of this. So we've now upgraded it in a sense that allows us to build newer functionality and newer capability on top of this chart. So this is just the beginning of this release. We will continue upgrading and updating and including new functionality from this. Now at this point, I'd like to begin the live QA session. I'm going to hand over to Jyoti Jain, who will take it from here.
Thank you, Zach. I hope everybody can hear me well. So I would start us with the live demonstration for today. And I'm going to quickly share my screen here, and we can jump right into the live demo. All right. Bobby, can you see my screen?
I do not see it.
Okay. I'll just make sure my screen is visible. All right, trying one more time here. All right. Okay. All right, so good. So today I'm going to show you some examples of how to use our platform to analyze data that is coming from your PV systems. And I'm starting here in the fleet view, which is a very common page for a lot of our partners to start in. I get to the fleet view from here, from the top menu bar. What the fleet view does, it gives me a very good bird's eye view of my portfolio. So for our partners who are managing large fleets with hundreds and thousands of systems, this is a very good place to look at their sites as to look at all of their sites, the summarized view, as well as capability to look at some high-level data for each of these sites. This view here allows you to sort your sites with some basic parameters such as your DC capacity or performance ratios. And it also gives you a way to filter through your sites using a variety of parameters right here so that you can really filter through your sites and focus on the ones that you really you're interested in. And so with that, let me go over an example of a scenario that is fairly common among our partners. So take an example of an installer or a site technician on site who is calling in for a quick verification of a site that is just either commissioned or just an issue fixed. And they are calling up to find out, is my site sending data all right? And can you see the data all right? And is my site doing fine? So in order for you to do that, we provided you a quick way to search for a site. So I'm going to quickly search for the site here. And the fleet view will quickly bring up that site right away. And when you have an installer on the phone, you really do not want to spend a lot of time trying to find some basic information that he's looking for. So that's why what I'm going to walk through is it's important to note that this is the workflow for getting some quick answers on a site and let your installer, get on with their job and not waste any time at the site, because that's costing you money. So if you see here, the Fleet View right away shows me the MAC address of the device that is registered on the site. A common thing to first check is this the right device that I'm looking at? So a quick verification of the MAC address is a good idea, and to make sure that this is the right device that I'm talking about. Now further, a quick check into the data that is coming in from the site, I would open the charting tool, and this by default takes me to the latest power data that's coming in from the site. And so here you can see the site has been sending data all right, and at the right bottom here, we've made some recent changes to include this max power that your site is getting, and you can compare it right away with the DC capacity for your site. And you can see here that this site is pretty close to its DC capacity, and so it's performing fine. So this is the type of check that can be performed very quickly if you have enough data, or at least you can see what data you're receiving and when you received the last data. So this is designed to provide you very quick answers that you're looking for when you are getting these type of calls a number of times during the day. Another quick check which you may want to perform is you want to overlay the irradiance data on top of this power data to see how much sunlight am I receiving on the site, and is the power generation trending along with that. So for that, what I did here was I went to the model data list at the left bottom here, and I chose the irradiance data. And this irradiance data, for those of you who do not know, this comes from our virtual irradiance product. Our virtual irradiance product it's an optional product. So for this to be enabled, you have to request that with your account manager. What this allows you is, it allows you to use sunlight data that we gather from satellite images and make it available to you, so that you can then compare for each of your sites how much sunlight, how much fuel I'm getting on this particular site, and compare the site generation against that irradiance. So it's a good product for sites that don't have an on-site weather station. It is also a good backup for sites with weather station, because weather stations need a lot of calibration and maintenance. So it's a good backup to have. So we'll go more into that later. Now, this was an example of a site that was sending data. Now let's look at a site which is not sending us data, and how do you find such examples, and how do you go about assessing those? So I have a site here, which is the Mero Art site that I'm pointing to. And if you have this site set up correctly, you would see that a site that is not sending us data will have this indicator that is showing that this site is not sending us any data. To get more into the details of this such an issue, what you would want to do is you want to use this yellow hover over and go to the details of this alert. Here I can see that for this site, I have my system disconnected for several days now, since February 16th. To get a better view of the problem that's happening at this site, I want to open the charting tool. Now from there, I can jump right into the point where this issue happened. As you can see here, this alert is showing here as a red icon, which is another improvement we made recently to our charting tool to highlight what's an open issue versus what's an issue that's no longer open. So we can see here that this issue happened on February 16th, and definitely the site is not getting any data for a long time now. All right, so now, and what do you want to do here as a person who's looking at this issue? You're trying to decide, what do I do next? How long has this issue been happening? Do I need to take further action? So for this, you may want to look at the long-term data for the site and see if this has been a persistent issue, or is this something that has only happened recently. So sometimes system disconnects are common at sites that have connection issues. And so you want to check if this site has a persistent recurring problem of system disconnect, or is this a more recent phenomenon. So you can see here that the site for the last 1 year has been doing okay, but only recently it is faced with a number of issues here. And so a good action plan for this site here would be to perhaps call your homeowner or person on site and to find out if they know about this, if they know what's going on, and can they bring the system back online. Because a system disconnected doesn't necessarily mean that it is not producing power. It only means that our monitoring system is not getting data from that site right now. It may happen that once the system comes back online, if the meter was on, we will get all that data and it will be backfilled. So it may not be worth a truck roll at this point, but what you are thinking is, I want to get the system back online so that I can monitor it. So, the first step would be to just try and find out what's going on at the site, perhaps remotely. Now with that, I'm going to jump into a little bit, I'm going to jump into some performance analysis examples. So let me close these charts here and go back to my suite view. All right. So before I go into the performance analysis itself, I want to point out what our platform is providing you in terms of data in order to do this type of analysis. If you see on the right here, I have these two numbers, this acronyms called year and gear. These are ratios that our system calculates for our sites that we're monitoring. Now I want to take a moment to explain what these ratios are. The first one here is the year ratio, or what we call the expected energy ratio. What this ratio is doing is it's measuring performance of your site against expected energy. So all it's saying is that this is your performance with respect to how much you expected to generate of the site for, say, last month and this month. So this is these numbers that we use to calculate this ratio are provided by you to us for each site during registration. And so we measure the performance against these numbers. The next set of numbers here is what we call the gear ratio. If you recall, I mentioned our virtual irradiance product earlier. Now the gear ratio, what this one does is it eliminates the effect of fluctuations in irradiance at your site from your performance calculations. So what does that mean? What that means is that, to take a simple example, say your site is producing 80% of the expected energy. Now, you may think that your site is only performing at 80%, but that is based on your expected energy and expected sunlight at your site. What the gear ratio would do is eliminate that, because say if you are actually receiving only 80% of the sunlight that you expected to receive at the site, then your site is actually performing 100% when adjusted to sunlight fluctuation. So how do you use these ratios? I'll go into that a little bit. The year ratio is what tells you how you're doing with respect to your contract with your customer. These are the numbers you typically put in your contract, and you tell your customer that we are guaranteeing, say, 95% of these numbers, and then we are guaranteeing that the site would generate at least 95% of the expected energy. Whereas the gear numbers give you a better view of the operational issue at a site. And if the gear numbers are high, means operationally the site is doing okay. All right, so let's jump into some examples with that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just quickly sort by the year ratio. All right, so one example before I do an analysis of a site with detailed data, I want to point out that sometimes it is hard to use these numbers unless you have put in good data. An example of bad data is this site here that I'm pointing to at the bottom. If you see on the right, there are these year and year numbers which are very high and they don't look right. So this is a case of bad data. So what's happening here? So to understand this better, I'm going to go into the charting tool. And when it comes up, I'm interested in looking at the AC energy numbers. So I'm going to remove the power chart here, and I'm going to look at the AC energy data. So it is important to note that I am actually at the site level here in my selection pane, and I am plotting data at the site level. So I looked at the AC energy for the site. Now, a good practice for such sites is to look at the long-term trend, because that gives you the full picture of what's happening at a site. And I also think that a good way to look at this data is to use the bar chart. So you can see here that for the last 1 year, since March of 2015 to February 2016, the energy generated at this site seems to be doing fine. So why am I getting those bad numbers? When I plot this AC energy from the expected list, this now actually gives me the expected AC energy for this site. And I can see this green bar right at the bottom here. What does that mean? So in order to illustrate what's happening here, I'm going to hide this AC energy numbers. And this hide function here is a quick way to actually visualize your data without really removing that and recharting. It's a very fast way of bringing up and bringing or removing the plotted data. So when I look at the expected AC energy numbers here, I can see that these numbers are very low. For a site, it's 5 kilowatt hours in monthly generation just doesn't seem right. So what needs to happen here is that the user has to go to the site registration information that I just clicked on the site link and now opening the details of the site's registration. And from here, the site, I can get the detailed site data. The energy expectations tab here, this is what is provided to us, to the system, by the user in terms of expected energy data. So a good plan of action is to remove, to take this data out and actually import back in the right numbers in order for the system to do this performance analysis for you, because without that, you will not see good results. So now that you saw the example of bad data, let's look at a site that actually has done, that has uploaded good data, and so we can rely on these numbers and do an analysis of its performance. So I'm looking at this site here called the Southbury site. I can see the site has a capacity of 9.6 kilowatts. And on my right here, I can see that last month's performance was pretty low, in like close to 30%. This month it seems to be doing better, but I want to understand what's going on with this site. Why is it performing that way? Because as a fleet manager, I want to make sure that I look into sites that are underperforming and understand, is this worth paying more attention to? Do I need to roll a truck? What do I need to do? So that's the decision you are looking to make. And in order to make that decision, you need to do some further analysis, because as we all know, truck rolls are expensive. So what I'm doing here is I'm opening the charting tool for that site. And I can see right away that my maximum power here is 4.2 kilowatts, whereas the capacity of the site is more than double that. So what's going on? I mean, looks like the site is generating, but it doesn't seem to be generating fully at capacity. So I'm going to zoom out here a little bit and go back to a year worth of data. And I'm going to go back full year from March 2015 to February 29. All right, so I can see here that the my power curve seems to be fine recently, and I did have an alert recently, but overall, my maximum AC power has stayed all along at 4.6 and has never gone beyond that. And that's not a good sign. That means that the site is performing suboptimally. This recent issue here that you see, the zero generation alert, I'm going to zoom in that. And now I can see that, yes, in January and February, the site went through some problems where the site was generating zero for an extended period of time. But is that worth rolling a truck? The issue seems to have resolved now, and the site seems to be performing. And so the issue, what should be my next plan of action? So how about we zoom back in, and for that I'm going to use this browser back button, which is another feature that we recently added to the charting tool, where you can navigate to previous charts using the browser. Now here, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to plot the total AC energy for this site for the last year. As you can see here, these orange bars represent the energy that I generated. And next, I'm going to also plot the expected energy. So this is a site that shows me, this analysis shows me that all along the site has been performing suboptimally. It's producing energy at less than half of its expected energy, and the maximum power it's reaching is also less than half. So this is a site that is losing money right now. It will continue to do that for the next 20 years perhaps, unless this is paid attention to. And so this looks like a case where you want to roll a truck and fix the issue, because otherwise this problem will continue and it may not show up in terms of, it may not have any other indicators unless you do this type of trend analysis. I'm going to look at one more example next that will illustrate the value of this type of long-term performance analysis. Now, I'm pointing to this site here called the Genscape Ray Solar System. Now, this site here also seems to have some performance issues recently. My year ratio last month was 30%, and this month it's doing better. But I want to fully understand, again, is this a site that I need to do something about? So as before, I'm going to open the charting tool. All right, and I can see here that the site, as I said, seems to be doing fine in terms of the power that's generated. But I want to quickly look at the long-term trend here again. So so the first thing I want to do is perhaps I'll get rid of the AC power and switch to the AC energy for the site. All right. So I'm going to go back 1 year of data. So I'll start from March 2015 until February 2016, and look at that. All right. So what I see here is that this is my generated energy for the last 1 year. What I also want to do next is I want to plot the expected energy for this site. And you can see right away that the site seems to be doing fine during summer of last year, but in winter it seems to be doing really bad. It's performing less than 50% during all of these months. So what's going on? I'm going to next plot this insolation data, which is nothing but your irradiance summed up, just like you sum up power and get to the energy data. So as I plot this insolation data, which by the way is also coming from our virtual irradiance product. And now what I can see here, this green line is showing me that actually my generation is sort of is fairly in line with my irradiance at the site. So why am I seeing suboptimal performance? What's going on? In order to do that, I'm going to go back in time a little bit here. So as I click that back button, that arrow here, this is jumping right now into the previous year of data. And I can see that similar pattern in 2014, where the performance is really good during summer months and it just really tanks during winter. And I will go back just one more year to see if this is the case. And lo and behold, you have the same issue year over year. So what do I do now? As a fleet manager, what should be my action? This data does not say that this site needs a truck roll. There doesn't seem to be an operational issue at this site. This site, it seems like this site just needs an adjustment of expected energy data during the winter months. And so what needs to happen here is that as a fleet manager, I want to adjust the expected energy data to and make them lower for winter months, much more in line with the reality where the site is perhaps not going to generate as much during winter. So might as well adjust my contract with my customer and fix that, because otherwise this site is going to lose money every winter, year over year, and that's not a good thing. And what I may also want to do is not only fix the data for this site, but perhaps find the source of that expectations data and make sure that we do not, that this same thing, the same pattern is not repeated for other sites. So that's how you want to go about looking at this data, coming to a conclusion, and turning that into an action plan. Before I hand off to my colleague here, I want to show you one quick feature that we added. So for this type of site, a common workflow is to find out the total energy generated between a given set of dates. So if I had to find the total energy generated between the February of 2014 and February of 2015, and I can choose whatever date I want, I can see right away here the total energy generated and the total expected energy. What I may want to do is quickly download this data into a CSV file. And what that gives me is, without going into any sort of reporting, I can just quickly get that data out in a file, and I'll be able to then do my further analysis or use this data for processes such as the performance guarantee management. So what I showed you here are examples of sites where we can use data from our system to do long-term trend analysis and to understand what's the best way to go about improving performance on these sites. With that, I'm going to hand off to my colleague, Bobby Astrich, and he's going to go over some more examples with you, how to utilize our system.
All right, cool. Thank you, Jody. So I'm sharing my screen now, and I'm also starting here in the Fleet View page. I'm going to go ahead and start by selecting a group that I created, and this is the greater than 20 kilowatt DC capacity group that I created, and I'll quickly show you how I created that. In this group search options here, if you click show more search options, right here I see minimum 20 kilowatts per site capacity. And then if I go ahead and search that and create a group up here, that's what enabled me to create this group. So now that I have that group created, I can quickly drill down to a smaller set of sites. So groups are a feature of our Solar NOC platform, and they help you to just narrow down a large fleet into smaller sections so that you can easier digest large amounts of sites. And so here I want to look at some larger systems because they have more complicated site hierarchies and a wider variety of components. But a lot of what I go over is still going to be applicable to some smaller sites as well. So one of the core reasons we might go into the charting tool is to investigate further some underperformance on certain sites. So the first example I want to start with is this Marlton site. I can see right away in the fleet view that it has a 75% year from last month. The interesting thing about this is that I can also quickly see that there's 97% gear. And as Jody mentioned, that gear ratio is coming from our VI, and it's our irradiance adjusted energy expectations ratio there. So right away, this can start to tell me that probably the issue of that 75% is really just a lower than expected irradiance on the site during last month. Let's go ahead and open the charting tool and take a closer look. So I'm going to remove power, and what I'm interested in is the month of February. I'm going to go ahead and select that, and we're going to plot the measured energy of the site as well, and we're also going to convert that into a bar chart here, and then we're going to plot the expected energy. And so this green line here indicates our expected energy, and you can see this is a month of expected energy broken down at daily granularity, so it's just a straight line across the month, but it still gives us a pretty clear, quick indication of our performance versus our expectations. So I can right away see that we have many more sites or many more days of data below that expected value than above here. But what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to plot the insolation from the weather station here. So I do have a weather station on site. I can plot this plane of array insolation. And as soon as I plot that, the story changes pretty drastically. We can see that the daily generation more or less follows that exact curve of the chart. All right, so I'm going to jump back to the fleet view. We're going to look at a similar underperforming site, but this time our gear ratio will be low as well. So I'm going to look at this Southbridge site here on the fleet view page, and I see 70% ear and 73% gear. So we're going to see if maybe some of the issues from last month were caused by something other than the irradiance. So I'm going to again go ahead and plot 1 month, and this time I'm going to do something a little bit different. We do have multiple inverters and PV meters on this site. I want to quickly point out an upgrade that we made to the charting tool recently. We've reorganized your components in your site hierarchy so that you can see the hierarchical relationship. So we can see that this inverter 1 is flowing through to PV meter 1 all the way down, and we can see these weather stations listed as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and plot energy, measured energy for each of the 6 inverters. And we're going to get these loaded up here. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and convert all of these to bar charts real quick, and it's very easy to quickly see the performance. So we can already start to see there was probably some issues here in the middle of the month. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and overlay that insolation from the weather station. And so this shows us right away that, okay, the beginning of the month, this performance is really following that insolation curve really closely, as well as at the end of the month. The middle of the month, we seem to be underperforming for other reasons. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and drill down to a finer granularity, less days, and I'm going to go ahead and once this loads, I'm going to revert these back to line charts because at 5-minute granularity, the bar charts are much less readable. And so right away, I can see that it looks like 4 of my inverters have dropped into a 0-gen state for about 3.5 days here. I'm going to go ahead and turn on alerts, and let's see what actually is showing up. So we do see that there's multiple 0-gen alerts opened at the end of the February 13th here for the 4 inverters. And then we also see there's a few inverter faults, it looks like. I'm going to zoom in so that we can see them a little easier. And yeah, I can see that there were several inverter faults that happened the morning of the 14th. That these will provide us some clues as to what happened that morning. Also note that here it appears that the 0-gen alert actually happened before the inverter faults, but the way that the 0-gen alert positions itself in time is that its start time will always be the last timestamp of energy generation. So that's why it's showing as being at the end of the previous day. But we can see from these inverter faults that that would be a quick clue as to what was going on. And now I'm going to go ahead and zoom back out. I want to see how much energy we maybe lost in February because of this. So I'm going to select a month here. And we're going to look at the site level. We'll pull up that measured energy, expected energy, as well as the modeled energy. And so down here on the right side of the legend, we see these sums. And so we can see our sum for the month, measured AC energy, 211,000 kilowatt hours. And then we can also see the sum of the expected energy as well as the modeled energy. So comparing that measured energy to that modeled energy value is going to give us a rough estimate of what kind of loss we actually had during the month. All right, so one of the next things I want to do is I want to look at a site that has a bunch of inverters on it. And to do that, I'm going to take a look. I'm going to use our bookmarking capability. So first I'm going to go ahead and break down what saving and sharing a chart looks like and how we're able to bookmark these charts. So in my browser, I've created this bookmark folder called Locus Charting Tool. And then I've broken down the subfolders by site. And so I'm going to go ahead and click on this La Paloma. I'm going to open a new tab first, and then I'm going to click on this monthly energy generate expectations. And so we can see that this immediately pulls up this chart that I'd saved. Here I had saved it for February 1st to February 29th, and I'm looking at measured insolation from the weather station as well as expected energy, modeled energy, and measured energy from the site. So I'm going to dissect this URL real quick. So I'm going to pull it into just a text editor so we can break down the URL really easily. So each of these things after the charting question mark are called query params, and these are telling the chart what it actually contains. So, and they're each divided by this ampersand. And so we can see that we have an end time of February 29th. We have the fields. These correspond to each of the 4 data series we have plotted. We have the granularity of daily. We have Q equals and then some text here. And what that is indicating is that's actually, the Q equals is a search query. So that's indicating up here where we have La Paloma inserted into the search. We have the start time, and then we have a time zone. So the reason you might want to include this Q equals La Paloma in my case is that by including that, your search browse pane with your sites here it's going to automatically load with whatever you've searched there. So it can help narrow down what you're looking at in the site hierarchy. And then I also want to quickly show that if you can remove, if you don't have the end time, the start time, or the granularity in your query, in your URL there, it's going to automatically default open to the last 5 days at 5-minute granularity. So I'm going to go ahead and open another bookmark that I have, which will open up this recent alerts bookmark. And so this was a bookmark I saved where I had never updated the time frame of the chart. And so we don't have a start time or an end time or a granularity present in the URL. And so this is by default always going to open to the last 3 days at 5-minute granularity. So this is an example of a recent alerts chart where I just have plotted the site power, and I have alerts turned on. So you can also see that's another query param up here, alerts equals true. And so this is a quick way for me to see all the recent alerts that are open on that site. You know, I think it may seem complicated, all these things, but the important thing to realize is that when you're adding things to the chart, that URL is updating automatically. So I just I'm going to go ahead and clear this out. We can still see that my Q equals La Paloma here. Everything else is cleared out. So I can quickly create a new bookmark and save it. So I'll just do measured energy versus modeled energy for the last 3 days. And then in my browser, I can go ahead and choose to save this. I'm going to save this to my La Paloma folder, and I'm going to call it La Paloma recent site performance. And I can go ahead and save that. And now I see that now I have that bookmark saved, and I can always pull up the recent 3 days. So now that we've learned about that, I'm going to jump into an example using that. So I'm going to look at this La Paloma measured power here. So this automatically brought up the last month of measured power for all 15 inverters on this site. And at first glance, it appears that inverter 6 and 7 are underperforming compared to the others. If we scroll down in the legend here, we can actually see that inverter 6 and 7 are half of the DC capacity of the other inverters. And so it can be more difficult to compare the performance because it's always going to be much lower. So in order to do that, what we can do is I'm going to open up another bookmark that I had, which is normalized power for all inverters. And while it's loading, I'll show you where that lives in the data available here. So for each inverter, I have AC power here. If I scroll down to modeled data, I also have AC power normalized. And in order to have that there, I need to be able to, first I need to be able to plot AC power for that component. I also need to have DC capacity entered in my configuration for the component, because that's going to be the denominator for the ratio here. And so I see that I have AC power normalized and AC energy normalized. So I'm going to pull up that. This is the bookmark I loaded of normalized power for all 15 inverters. And I can immediately see, okay, inverter 7 actually, that's the pink line at the bottom. It actually is the worst performer out of these inverters, but inverter 6 is actually performing better than over half of the other inverters. So that's a quick way to view normalized data. You could also view normalized energy data on a site. You could compare two nearby sites using normalized energy potentially. And then I'm just going to show one last quick thing, which is for sites with string inverters. I just opened the charting tool for a site called Bolus School. And this site has combiner boxes on them. So we see current broken down at the string level. And so for these combiners with strings, I see my measured data of DC current string 01 through 08. I also see down here at the bottom of the data available that I have this DC current all strings template. I can click on that, and that's going to load up the current from all 8 strings right away. And so you might use this if you're trying to figure out a underperforming site and you have string data. You might want to drill down to the actual string level itself. So this is a saved bookmark I have, which will show modeled and measured power of this same site. And so I see that my measured power is below my modeled power, and particularly in the morning, it looks even worse. So if I go ahead and pull up those strings, I'll go ahead and convert these to bar charts. So when these strings come in, it's easier to see. So I'm going to plot the DC current all strings for string 1 through 8. And we can see, okay, it looks like string 7 and string 1 are having some interesting issues in the morning, so that can help us drill down to the actual string level pretty quickly. All right, so I think that's everything we wanted to go over with you today. I want to thank everyone again for taking the time to join us. We definitely hope that this was helpful. And we'd like to take a minute here to gather some questions, and we're going to do a live Q&A session with the remaining time. So give us 1 minute to get things gathered, and we'll be right back.
All right. So thank you, everyone, for staying with us so far, and we will just quickly go over some of the questions and answers potentially to those questions. So one of the questions we got was, why do I not see normalized power as an option in my model data section of the charting tool? and we're getting a lot of questions on this normalized power. So the normalized energy and power require you to input a value for the DC size of the given component. And that is, I think, and Bob mentioned that as well, is that goes into the calculation for normalized power. And without this, we do not know what is the denominator to use for this equation. So that is why, in order for you to get that normalized power, you need to enter the DC size of the component. Another question that we got was, why do I not see options for modeled irradiance or insolation in my charting tool in the data available? And the reason for that is that virtual irradiance product is an add-on, and it's available for use throughout our platform. But since it's an optional offering, you will have to contact your sales account manager for more information about this product and how to get it enabled.
All right, so we have a question. Why is inverter 10 listed above inverter 2 in my component list? Okay, so because your component names can contain letters and numbers, we sort that search browse pane alphanumerically. So this means that the value 10 is actually registers ahead of that value 2 because the first digit is actually used to sort before reading the second digit. So a simple fix for this is to name your inverters like inverter 01, inverter 02, 03, and so on. And I mean, similarly, I've come across systems where they seem to be in random order, and then I'll look and I'll see there'll be like a rogue space in the name of the component. Consistent naming conventions are definitely important to have a clear organization there in the search browse pane. All right. So another question, can we save charts in the charting tool itself? So we don't, the charting tool itself does not currently provide any way to save chart URLs within the app. But we do feel that the browser provides a really clean way of organizing those saved charts. And so, like I showed, you can sort your saved bookmarks by folder, maybe by site, and that helps you organize them there. And likewise, you can save those URLs with coworkers. You can send it through email in any way. To share that, all that requires that the person that you're sending it to also has access to our platform and can see that site data within SolarOS. But so that URL is easily savable and easily shareable with others.
I think we have time for one last question. So we're going to go over the difference between expected and modeled energy. Modeled energy on the platform and charting tool uses an on-site plane of array sensor that also measures panel temp. And then it also needs the user to provide a DC system size in order to calculate the modeled energy based on a standard temperature D-rate model. So that will only be available for sites that have an on-site irradiance sensor. And in comparing this to expected energy on the platform, expected energy is based off a user uploaded value. Typically, users will use something like PVSYST to generate that expectation value. So we're comparing something from a live on-site irradiance sensor to an uploaded value based on a model like PV1. And with that, I think we're close to concluding. Anything left from Caitlin?
Yes, just a couple of quick things. I wanted to thank everyone for joining us again. As I mentioned at the beginning, we'll make the slides and recording available to everybody who registered following the webinar. So you'll receive that by email probably tomorrow morning. We received a lot of questions during the webinar, and if we were not able to address them during the live Q&A, we will follow up with you directly via email. There is also a survey on your screen, and we'd really appreciate any feedback you can give us so we can continue improving our webinars and addressing the topics that you find most useful and interesting. And with that, thank you again and have a great rest of your day.